going to be a really, really interesting few hours, and I hope that we all get an opportunity to add to our kite of knowledge around neurodiversity. Ko ai ko Bridget Naki Tokawingawa. I'm lucky enough to have been one of the on the conference organising committee. So I will pass over to Delphine now. She is going to be presenting a workshop this afternoon. Delphine Mitchell from Te Herena Waka, Victoria University of Wellington, is an experienced science educator who specialises in working with students with learning difficulties. This workshop will cover some common issues and the functions that impact neurodivergent akonga. Delphine will also explore how to identify and support akonga. Her workshop is entitled Understanding and Working with Neurodivergent Students. Kia ora, Delphine.
Hi, thanks for that. Just a bit of a disclaimer to start with. I discovered this morning that my PowerPoint didn't save properly last night, so I had to quickly redo it, so some of the formatting might not be great. But hopefully I've remembered everything in there. I'm just going to share my screen. Yeah. And start slideshow there. Sorry, just moving things around so I can actually see. Yeah, so my background is I'm a science educator and a neurodivergent coach. I'm neurodivergent myself, and I'm also rainbow. So over my entire teaching career, I've worked a lot and specialised in working with neurodivergent students. And over time, and since working at the uni for the last almost 10 years, I've been able to do a lot more research as well into kind of how the brain works and how things impact students. So, sorry, things aren't working quite properly. So I know I'm going to fly through some of this. There's quite a lot to pack into 40 minutes. I was hoping to have a bit more time, but we'll do what we can. And hopefully at the end of it, we'll have a bunch of good information that we can share with our colleagues as well. So I'm kind of assuming most people know what neurodivergence is. It's just a brain difference. Everyone's brain is slightly different, but this is like, as opposed to just diverse, which just describes the population, we actually diverge from the norm, right? So it's not a medical term. It's just come to be used instead of normal, abnormal, because there's not really normal. And so if you're not neurodivergent, you're neurotypical, right? So you have the same strengths and challenges as probably the majority of the population. So you don't have to deal with some of the things we do. So these are some conditions that are considered a part of neurodivergence. We all know that things often appear in clusters, not just these conditions, right? You don't have to have a label, so to speak, or a diagnosis to be neurodivergent. But often, you know, what we deal with as learning advisors, we'll see a lot of students with ADHD or autism, dyslexia, dyscalculia, things like that. So specific learning difficulties is probably what we see the most of. And there's some commonalities to that. I prefer to use neurodivergence because a lot of the labels are so misunderstood or not well enough understood. So if I said to you someone's autistic, you'd think of them this way. If I said they were dyslexic, you'd think of them this way. Instead, if you think of them as neurodivergent, you can actually focus on their strengths and weaknesses rather than the label and the generalities. So that's why I choose to use that term and kind of ignore these labels when I'm working with students or anyone really. So I wanted to talk a bit of background about this. First, I wanted to do a poll. So thinking about yourself, and I decided to do this as a poll so everyone's anonymous, classify yourself as either neurodivergent or neurotypical. If you're thinking you might be neurodivergent for some reason, pick whichever label you prefer at this moment in time. I'm just going to launch this poll and give everyone a minute to do that. most people have answered, so I'm just going to end that and share results. Can everyone see the results? So in this room, about 20% of the people here consider themselves neurodivergent, right? And that's probably about what I expected. If I go back to here. So in New Zealand, about 25% of people are considered to have a disability, and that's physical or mental, cognitive, however you describe it. Various stats from around the world, various estimates of specific learning difficulties like autism and things like that. They vary between 5 and 20% of the population, depending on what you're talking about. I think dyslexia is around 7 to 10%, that kind of thing. So if we think about it, 20% of people in the room considering themselves neurodivergent isn't unexpected, right? And if you think about it, that's actually quite a high percentage of our student population as well. And a lot of them may not even realize that they are. They may not realize that they're struggling or why they're struggling. But the interesting question is, does your workplace reflect this? Because we know it's really important to have lived experience. Like with the whole new disability thing that's being set up, it's really important to have people with disabilities involved, right? Because it's the lived experience of people that matters when working with them. And a lot of my students I work with, you know, a common comment is, you're the first person that's ever understood how my brain works, right? Because I just get it. It's not different. Yeah. So I wanted to go into breakout rooms, and I want you to think about some of your neurodivergent students and some common factors about them and or challenges they face. I'm going to give each group a label to think about. So I've just done 4 because I think the 3 main ones we see are the autism, ADHD, and dyslexia. And they're kind of more well-known than the others. And so other is anything else, really, which is quite a big list. But there's kind of a point to that. So, and what I've done is I've created a Miro board, which I'll just pull up. Oh, sorry. Here. So just drop thoughts onto the sticky note, which, sorry, I just will put the, need to go back to here, don't I? Sorry. I'm going to copy this link into the chat so people can open it. Everyone. There. And then how many people have we got? 60. I wanted about 6 people in each breakout room. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to assign you randomly to breakout rooms. We're going to have about 10 of them. So within your breakout room, maybe just choose which label you want to focus on. I was going to assign them, but I think it should work as long as we don't get too many things. I can't, I've lost the breakout room.
I can do it.
Yeah. Yeah, probably 6.
6 breakout rooms.
Probably roughly 6 to 7 people per breakout room. Anything more than about 6 people gets.
Right. I'll make 10 breakout rooms. So
yeah.
That's roughly. Okay. And then I'll assign automatically.
Yeah, assign randomly.
So I'll launch the breakout rooms now.
Yeah. Stop my share, that might help.
Hi, Delphine. I'm looking for you. Would you know how many? I think we forgot to ask how many minutes will this be? We can broadcast. Sorry, you're muted.
I am muted. Yeah. Oh, for the breakout room. I was going to kind of wait till I had what I kind of needed. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
It's
just tell me. Okay.
Yeah.
Just let me know if I need to close the breakout rooms.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oops. Maybe can we do a 2 minute?
10 minutes? 2 minutes, sorry.
Two. I think two more minutes. Yeah.
Okay. I'll broadcast that. Delphine, I will close all the breakout rooms now.
Okay.
That's 2 minutes. So okay. They'll be back here.
Screen. Sharing this.
We're doing an activity in the Nido board.
Oh, right.
If you had two screens, you'd be able to be seen that
it is being recorded.
There we go. Wow.
Is that the room? Yeah. Okay, great.
Yep, everyone's here.
Okay, so the kind of, I guess, point of this was to pull together people's thoughts. But what I wanted to show you, actually, this one stood out to me, so I'm going to do this first, this lack of belief in themselves. So I'm just going to pull something from everyone that goes with this previous stigma, right? These are all things that can contribute to this, right? They all have it. So it's very navigating around neuro. I love it, but it takes a while to get used to.
Delphine, is there any way of stopping those little things wandering around the screen? We were just discussing in our breakout room how distracting it was.
Oh, it is when you've got a lot of
inducing.
people. If I stop sharing the board, now people should only be able to view it, I hope.
Great, thanks. Great.
Well,
those things just did my head in.
Yeah. Right. So that's something to bear in mind. One comment, a piece of research that I think it was Russell Barkley did, suggested, and this was around, he's an ADHD expert, but he said ADHD children, by the time they are 12, are told 20,000 more times than a neurotypical that they are lazy or not trying hard enough or other negative things. Now, if you take it from when they start school, that's several times a day, right? So that's why there's a lot of things in there. So there's things, that kind of goes in there, right? So there's difficulty organizing information, that kind of goes with accessing that. I'm just jumping around a bit. I was like, oh, this and this and this. There's sensitivity to environmental factors there. There's that. I also saw that pop up in the ADHD one somewhere there, right? So it's about, this is what I mean about not looking at the label, actually going, what is the problem? Sensory processing disorders is there. Multitasking is quite a common one. They're adapting, right? That goes for ADHD and others as well. Lack of trust, that kind of up there. So I think you can say, I don't want to spend too much time on this, or we could be here forever. But I think if you take the time to look at it, you'll start to see there's definite patterns between each of them. There's things that sit in each thing, right? And things that maybe don't cross over all of them, they're some of the things that are very individual, like they say, if you've, there's, oh, sorry, I lost my train of thought. That's all right. We'll come back to that. So I love this, negative past experiences. And that's really a huge factor to consider with anyone who's neurodivergent. There's a lot of trauma in their past, and that has a big impact on them going forward. But I'm just going to go back to my PowerPoint from current slide. Right. Okay. So that was kind of to get you thinking outside the labels and see that there's a lot of commonalities. And hopefully we'll have time to come back to that at the end to think about it. But there's one kind of key thing that I wanted to focus on, and it's kind of, I guess, the prompts. These were the prompts for me wanting to do this talk. So over the last close to decade, there have been a number of comments that have stuck with me when I've been talking about students, especially neurodivergent students, with colleagues. And yeah, so they were things like, why do these students choose to do postgrad when, they have so many problems with organization and time management and things like that? They're always late, or they just don't show up. They do everything at the last minute. They're constantly stressed. And the key one that, I hear all the time, they just need better time management, right? So this is the key thing, that all of these are related to each other in the same underlying thing that affects the vast majority of neurodivergent people. And that's time blindness. Not many people have heard of it or know much about it. It's the inability to sense passing of time, and it makes so much of your life difficult. It's a sensory issue, not an intentional disregard for time. I could not tell you whether 5 minutes has gone or 20 minutes has gone, except for I've got a timer in front of me because I have to. But I have no innate sense of how much time has passed. It's hardwired, so you can't fix it, can only be managed, which means strategies, which we're going to talk about. If you are time blind, you are neurodivergent, right? But not all neurodivergents are time blind, right? But the vast majority are. So effects, there's a lot of them. And I think when you think about these in terms of your students, now that you've got some students in front of your brain, you'll recognize them. Chronically late, can't tell you how long ago an event happened, can't be organised, struggle to organise, complete work, distraction when transitioning, being late, missing deadlines, putting things off, misjudging how long it takes to do things, intentions and actions don't line up. I intended to be on time, but I lost track of time and I wasn't. I intended to be. And often feeling inadequate or like a disappointment and being misjudged because of that. The key points for me are that it's as intentional as colour blindness. A colourblind person can't tell the difference between hues, right? They know they exist if they know they're colourblind and that other people can see them, but they can't. And much like I can't understand what it's like to be colourblind, if you're not time blind, you can't really understand what it's like. I can't even imagine what it's like to not be time blind, actually. I'm like, really? Is that how normal people are? Right? So I know I should look at a clock. I had my Fitbit recently died. I had a Fitbit and people go, but you've got a watch. I'm like, no, I've got a Fitbit. It's a photometer. Like I never thought to, look at it like a watch. So when you don't perceive that time is passing, you also don't kind of perceive that there's someone waiting for you or that there's something happening that's just out there somewhere. It's a disability that's created by the society we're in, right? Because of the way society exists and functions, it creates this disability. And especially if in a university situation or a study situation. Not much we can change about that, but we can help with strategies. A lot of people are actually unaware they're time blind. It's kind of like when I was a science teacher at high school, most years in year 10, we would teach about light and colour in the eye, and just about every year a student found out they were colourblind in that lesson, right? They didn't know they were different until they kind of figure it out that this is a thing and this is how they see the world. And of course, when it comes to managing it, you can't manage what you can't see. Now, if you can't see time, it makes it so saying they just need better time management when they can't see time is kind of an impossible statement. So that's where we come in, helping them see time. Like, for instance, if you need to manage your money, what's the first thing you do? You make it visible by writing down a budget or having a cash budget or something, but you make something invisible visible so you can manage it. So that's where I'm going with this, hopefully. Right. I'm going to fly through this bit because I can see I've already been half an hour. So I put off at the end on resources, there's a couple of different timelines tests, but this is a really quick one. And a lot of these questions, when I'm talking to students who are neurodivergent, I kind of ask them, I have 2 or 3 questions that are similar to these that I ask them about how they experience the world. And that tells me whether or not they're time blind, right? Do they have a good sense? Or could be any time of day, right? I'm at any time of day. It's light out. It's somewhere between this time and this time. Text when I'm 3 minutes out, right? I have had to train myself that I don't say I'm on the way until I've actually left the house. My friends used to joke about me when I'd say on the way, and if I got there within an hour, I was on time. So I've had to kind of retrain myself with that. Study, you can estimate the amount of where everything takes longer than anticipated. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Someone who's timeline can't see 5 years. When I first started at Vic and I first had to do the PDCP or whatever they call it, and it was like, what's your 5-year plan? And I wrote be alive because I've got no idea. What's 5 years is like no idea. So these are just, I guess, ideas or discussion points that you can use to kind of almost screen to see if your students are possibly time blind, because it's such a big impact. The big thing to understand with time blindness is a person's time horizon. So it's the point in the future or the past when things stop feeling real. So it's a period of time that we can realistically work within. Typical adult, 8 to 12 weeks. Time blindness, a week or 2, and some people's time horizon is only a few days. Mine's about 2 days. So I started writing this talk on Monday because that's when it came into my time horizon. I had it mulling around in my head, and it ended up being a good thing because when my computer deleted everything, it was still fresh in my brain. So, but that's why often students do things at the last minute, because that's when it appears in their time horizon. So we often talk about 2 time zones, now and not now. So if you ask me what's happening next week, I will say that's in the not now. This week is in the now, so I can talk about it. Next week, not now. So I have to do my planning for the week on a Monday morning. I can't do it on a Friday afternoon because it's in the not now. And that can be really tricky because planning is a key part of study and planning quite far ahead. So our students need a lot of help with this. So the main strategy, acknowledgement, acceptance, right? This is a thing. This is a real thing. And it's acceptance, but also the student accepting it and accepting that this has an impact and what they can do about it. There's a part of that shame and feeling not good enough One of the things that often changes when students get diagnosed and they actually accept it is they're like, oh, this is why. There's not something wrong with me. This is who I am. So it's just, I am time blind, and these creates these issues for me. Here's my strategies, but sometimes they don't work, and that's okay, right? So really having that attitude, especially with our students, is quite important. Education for the student and yourself. There are tons of resources about this. A lot of the resources for time blindness do sit around ADHD, because combined with the other executive functioning issues, it has a huge impact on people with ADHD. But my students with dyslexia and dyspraxia and even some with autism, they all have time blindness as well. It's just the level of impact it kind of has. It's pretty universal. And so it's really about making time visible. I'm really nervous about running out of time. So obviously planners has to be somewhere the student will see it. If they have a smartwatch, it should be on their screen. It should be on the home screen of the phone, not buried in the phone, because the moment they open the phone, they will get lost in the phone. If it's in a planner or a notebook, it will stay buried in their bag. When they need help making the plan, you need to include buffer time. We talk about time timers, which are visible timers. That's an example of a time timer. That's a Google at one, but you can get physical ones that basically you can wind it up and you can physically see how much time you have left. Time tracking, which is asking them to track for a day or a week, actually how long certain things take them, right? Because they'll go, oh yeah, it only takes me 5 minutes to get ready. But if they actually time it, they'll realize it takes them 20 minutes, right? But it feels like 5 minutes to them. So getting them to do that so that you can then build that into their plan. Multiple alarms, but the alarm should have a label. I have so many alarms. Each of them has different sounds. There's a sound for leave the house. There's a sound for, whatever, do this, do that, take meds, that kind of thing, right? So when this sound goes, it's kind of a bit of a Pavlov dog response, I guess. I hear this sound, I know I need to leave the house, right? Get my shoes on now and get out, right? Playlists, a lot of my friends use playlists. I've got a friend who has a playlist in the morning, and he knows when this song plays, it's time to get out of the shower. When this song plays, it's time to put on his shoes, that kind of thing. So because, each song, so you use playlists of songs to create, and of course music is good and energizing and all that kind of thing. Daily logs are really good for students with time blindness, and daily logs are at the end of each day writing down what they did do. Not what they, but because that helps them keep track of what they did and when they did it, and possibly if they want, how they feel about it. Now, of course, a lot of these students will be with poor organization and things like that, will not be good at this, but as a habit that they can develop, because we tend to remember what we didn't do, what we failed at. So this actually helps give a physical, I did this, I got all these things done, when it feels like they haven't done anything. So for us as learning advisors, helping them break up assignments, I find that time limits on each section are much better. I use the 1% rule, which is about an hour per percent. And so obviously there's a lot of variation within that. But I'll say, okay, you're going to spend 1 hour writing the introduction. That's it. After that, you're not coming back to it. You're going to spend a maximum of 2 hours doing your background research kind of thing. Keeping each section when we're planning it out within their time horizon. So, for instance, their time horizon is 2 days, actually making each thing 2 days apart. So they can see that they have to do this within this time before they can move on to the next thing. Helping strategies for accountability. I've got a ton of these. One my students love is I used to meet a friend every Friday after work for drinks, and it would say what we wanted to do the next week or whatever. If you hadn't done it, you had to buy the first round. It's not really that accountable, but it was enough that sometimes it forced you into doing it last minute.
Delphine,
yep.
Aroha mai for butting in. Just to, we're 2 minutes. We've just got 2 minutes to wrap up.
I knew I'd run out of time.
Apologies, we're on a really tight time frame this afternoon.
Yeah. Tests and exams, right? You'll get these slides, writing it down. I was focusing on what the student needs. So actually what everyone's individual, that's really important. The students learning in this, build and buffer time. I had a student that was always late. So I built in kind of 20 minutes after a slot for admin that I'd do while I was waiting for him. So it didn't matter if he was late. A lot of these students have high empathy. So I know it's frustrating, but if you can't, they will see that glance at the clock or an eye roll, and they will just quite likely just not come back, right? That sense of rejection is huge. Talk to other people, talk to the students. Learn from their experience, and there are so many resources online. And I'm sorry, I flew through this. There are tons of strategies. I'm happy to talk to anyone about this if you've got specific students. It's I think for me the important message that I give students is that if a strategy doesn't work, it's the strategy's fault, not yours. It wasn't the right one for you. And it's trial and error, right? Until you find something that works. So the bigger the bank, and that, again, that's where what the students need. I love my adult students because I can throw strategies at them and they just, no, that won't work for me. Doesn't matter why, they just know it won't work, right? Because they understand themselves better than our 18-year-olds do. So, yeah. So, okay, that was hopefully I didn't talk too fast. Do I have time for any burning questions?
Unfortunately, not now.
No, that's okay.
Ngā mihi nui, Delphine. That was really, really interesting and provided a lot of food for thought. Thank you so much.